Hello there, and welcome to Tech 4.3, episode 2. Super exciting that we're back. I'm sure everybody's riveted at this point. We have our panel. Yeah, our panel here obviously is back again. You guys want to introduce yourself, Edward and Brian? Introduce yourself.
You just introduced us.
Yes.
Yeah, you did just introduce us.
Fair enough. Eddie Daniels.
The only difference is
Google fame.
you don't know who's who. So I could be Brian or Edward.
Okay, so take your pick. It's whoever. So, I have Eddie who just spoke, Brian who just got back into the country. So that's exciting. In the homeland.
Well, from the homeland back to the homeland. So
claim what you want to claim, I guess. So there's a lot of different stuff this week as well. I think that some cool stuff has came up in the news, mobile wise, and even some other Tesla stuff that you'll get into later. But we have a different sort of group of stuff this week, which I think is kind of exciting, and just to kind of go through some of that stuff because it is Eddie's favorite and biggest subject right now. Google in general. Apparently, I read a couple things about a Pixelbook 2018, and Eddie was actually speaking of a stand of sorts that I'm not 100% sure about yet. Can you enlighten us a little bit, Eddie, on what we're looking at there?
Yeah, one of the previews in one of the apps, there's a little bit of code in there that hints at wireless charging and a smart stand. And the smart stand is apparently supposed to, like currently, if your phone isn't connected to trusted Bluetooth or a trusted location, and you say the hot word to get it to do something, if you're far enough away, it's not sure of your voice and it just stays locked and doesn't do anything. This is supposed to give like some access so that whenever you speak and say, hey, turn off the lights, what's the weather, call or text somebody, it doesn't make you go walk over and unlock the phone. It just fulfills the request while still keeping some aspect of security. So that looks pretty neat. But it also is a big deal because I think we've had wireless charging in Nexus phones forever. And then I think with the 6P is where they ditched it. And then we haven't had wireless charging since. So that signals the comeback of wireless charging. And with the leaked renders out there, it looks like that they've changed the back slightly where it's all one piece now. So that's interesting. That'll be interesting to see.
I think what I saw, if I go to the list, before the end of the year, release dates, I think is what I saw. A detachable, so a 2-in-1.
Yep, that's the new Pixelbook. So it's it flips a whole way around. It's convertible, but it still is super weird to hold it with keys on the back. Like it just doesn't. They don't like retract like that Lenovo tablet does. Whenever you flip it over, the keys like suck into the board so that the back is flat. Like you actually feel the keys on the back, and it's super weird. But this one is supposed to be an actual detachable. So that'll be something similar to like what Microsoft's doing. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think that it was an odd skip because I saw a bunch of, and I'm sorry I skipped into the Pixelbook aspect of it, but it was an odd like transition where it was like, is this Pixelbook in a Surface Book or Surface Pro category, or because we all know Chrome OS is its own type of. It requires web apps, and it's a different sort of thing. I know you Eddie kind of live on that platform to a certain degree, but I think Brian uses a Chromebook now, and I started. I mean, I talked with Eddie for 2 months trying to figure out what Chromebook I was going to buy, and it worked fine until I decided I wanted to do these live streams. But the transition into something that's useful because they're talking about a 4K display from what I read. For creative applications, I mean, to do photo and video type stuff, and 4K playback. So the big craze now, whether they're talking about cameras or anything else, is HD screens or HD video or playback. In that aspect, it's more of we said we did it instead of a practical reason for it. I guess I would say.
Right now, there's no like content creation. There's not very good content creation stuff on the Pixelbooks or on Chrome OS for that matter. So you can't like, I know that Adobe's got something coming and everybody has something coming, but like as it stands for a creative professional, it's not really a viable option yet. But from an engineering standpoint, it makes me nervous because Chrome OS, like Chromebooks have traditionally been relatively cheap. And then you've got like the Google line, which is fairly pricey. And the product they have now is super pricey. Like the actual Pixelbook now, you know, you can get up to $1,400-$1,500. Now, if they make a detachable, that means the CPU's got to be in the actual screen part, not where it is now. Like we're currently all the Chromebooks and all the Pixelbook, it's engineered like a laptop where your CPU is in the base with the keyboard and it's got adequate space for cooling. If you have a detachable, you can't like disconnect it from the CPU, so it's going to have to be in the actual screen itself. That means you need fans in there, unless you have a mobile processor that doesn't need to be actively cooled. But then what kind of productivity are you going to have on a mobile chip? So they either figured out some sort of voodoo magic in order to make it happen, or it's going to be extremely expensive.
I kind of figured as much when we're talking about I've seen Pixelbook pricing that literally is up against like low end MacBook pricing, which scares me a little bit because MacBook pricing is like nuts anyways. But from what I read, we're talking about a Kaby Lake CPU, which isn't necessarily mobile processing at that point. That's what last year's MacBook had, the 2017, not the ones that are imploding this year.
Right. This year, they're full-fledged like i5, i7. I have the i7 version, and it's, you know, it was extremely pricey. So that's what makes me nervous about, because it's engineered like a laptop. It's engineered like just a regular, you know, they've just tweaked some things. This is a completely new and interesting design. Like there aren't very many devices that are engineered that way. And anytime you have something that unique, there's typically a price premium on it. So I don't know who it's going to be for. Yeah. Like who's going to say, oh yeah, that $2,000 is going to, for this Pixelbook that browses the web faster than ever, is going to be great. Like I don't know who it's for. I love it. I love my Pixelbook, but I think that if it gets any much more expensive, it's going to be super hard to justify.
Yeah, I mean, you doing a little bit of that content creation aspect, and it's like, you know what you need to be able to do those types of things. That's not something I guess you can see happening right now.
No, unless they created tools on the web, you know, for editing. But at the same time, it would be your professionals, like the people that do this YouTube for a living. They've got, you know, $10,000 machines for using Final Cut and Adobe Premiere. So your web tools are not going to be anywhere near as sophisticated. And then so you can say, well, that's for an entry level, you know, person, but someone who's like, oh, I'm going to edit my kids' videos, they're also not going to go drop $2,000 on a Pixelbook. So
I think I've watched enough on this MacBook, the new MacBooks, the 2018s, to the point where they're talking about an i9 that was having issues with ProRes and all the stuff that's like, so if we're talking about MacBooks that are struggling because of some of that thermal throttling stuff, but if we're talking about MacBooks that are having issues, you're not going to create a web-based service or web-based creative app that's going to be able to handle that. The stuff's going to go up in flames. It can't keep MacBooks cool enough to do 4K video editing. I mean, what are you going to do on an internet-based program?
Apple's, I don't know whose fault that was as far as that whole fiasco that's been unfolding with the MacBooks. Whether it's, you know, a lot of folks want to blame Intel because, you know, years ago, Apple traditionally, they make one chassis and that's it for many years. They don't have like a variety of lines or anything. They've got one chassis to put their components in, and then you just pay premiums for whatever you want, more RAM, you want more storage, whatever you want. They've just got that one chassis, and Intel promised them years ago they were going to move to 10 nanometer. So had Intel fulfilled the promise by now, that this wouldn't be an issue, but they kind of really screwed them as far as, hey, we're going to get you, we'll definitely have 10 nanometer. And here we are, they didn't get there. So they're slapping, 45-watt desktop CPUs into the thinnest device, thinnest chassis ever. And Apple's, really trying to keep the image where they don't want to be super loud. They don't want to have jet engine fans. And so, you have modest fan speed across this monster chip that's just really
zero fan speed.
Yeah.
It's like putting a toaster between two pillows and just holding it in there.
There we go. First metaphor of the evening. That's great. In that vein, I watched for a week and a half on this whole MacBook situation. Like the 2018s, when these 2018s updated processors, updated core count, pop up on the Apple Store one day with zero fanfare, like no release, no whatever. They just pop up and people are excited about this because this is what, when we're talking about pro users, these are the types of things that these guys needed, especially people that are using Final Cut versus Adobe. So it's $3,400 for 4 terabytes of SSD. So let's just double what we just talked about on a Chromebook price. And all of a sudden we have SSD that's like, granted, everything that I saw online, people were like, if you don't need this, don't buy this. This is what the cost of computers is. It was just striking to see as you go down the website and see like 4 terabytes, $3,400. I was like, that's tough to swallow. And then they came about with this whole thermal throttling thing on the i9. From what I didn't see anything with the i7, but the i9 apparently was thermal throttling when it was being, I think the test that I saw online was with Adobe, which is kind of tough to do on a MacBook considering the optimization for Final Cut on those machines. But it was throttling to a point where it was slower than last year's i7, I believe. Go ahead.
That's what happened, and it's all due to they kept the same. I mean, it's the same chassis as last year. If you had last year's MacBook, this year's MacBook, physically looking at them, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And they were really banking on Intel having that chip ready, and that would have made all the difference. But everybody's going bananas saying, "Hey, we need a new MacBook. We need a new MacBook with some real power." And Apple's in a situation. They said, "Okay, so Intel really messed us up. Their 10 nanometer process isn't ready, so we're going to have to stick this processor that was never engineered to be in this device, and just cross our fingers." I don't know.
From what I understand, it was a software fix a week later. Or whatever. It's just not. It's going to say, okay, when it wants to throttle, it just says no, don't. Basically,
right. But if I haven't heard the fan speed. I don't know if the active cooling has, if they did anything to change that. But if they didn't, then what does that do for the longevity of your device? You spend $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on a laptop, and you use it for pro work. You're pushing that CPU daily to its limits. So I don't know if they fix it just for now. Your options are, let it stay hot, and then you'll have a device that doesn't work in 2 years, or you do it now, and then you slowly, over software updates and over time, bring it back down to try to, after the hype is gone. Like, everyone will have forgotten about this in 30 days, and then they can just slowly revert back to the way it was, just to make sure that it doesn't melt down, because traditionally Apple's not super great with repairing or even admitting there's a problem. So if you have a bunch of
conversation was the fact that this stuff came up with a couple of YouTube videos, and I can link them later on after we're done here. But a couple of videos that I saw with the first one I saw was using Adobe, and basically they were tearing him up a little bit, saying he threw the perfect storm at this computer to get it to lock up, to get it to not really be able to handle it. And most of those professionals are buying this computer to use Final Cut. If you're spending, I think it was close to $10,000. I think it was like $8,500 or $8,900 for the spec'd out 4 terabyte i9 15-inch. That it was tough for these guys to get throttled like that. And most of the time, they're spending that money because they use Final Cut, and that it's optimized for that. But apparently, from what I had been seeing, that Apple reached out, like, this is beyond not their MO. The fact that they were kind of getting beat up a little bit out there on the interwebs, and reached out to say, hey, they wanted all of the code and the stuff he had ran to be able to run their own tests, just to see what was causing it and how they could fix it. And apparently that was a big step in the direction of this software update. That's like unprecedented when you're dealing with Apple, from what I understand.
Or they called him and said, listen, this is how it's going to go. You're going to take that down, or you're going to make a retraction video, but not obviously. And then you're going to tell that you sent us this stuff. Listen, Intel screwed up. You're giving us a bad name. Shut up. And then it's be a shame if something were to happen to you whenever you.
Okay. I haven't actually heard that version of the story.
There just people kicked in his door and then just took his laptop and just threw it in the tub and then turned the water on and said, now.
So I can see that end of it. Yeah. They after the fact, like when they had we talk a bunch of smack when they were the whole keyboard issue with last year's, and I think it was the butterfly keys from the year before, everything after 2015. Like, it took them 2 years in these new MacBooks in 2018, they just put a membrane underneath of the keyboard.
Right.
And literally
still didn't admit.
Yeah. And they were like, yeah, this is to make it a softer keyboard experience, or to make it not as loud. Not that your stuff breaks, because granted, clean your stuff. I mean, we know your stuff's immaculate, Eddie, but like, clean your computer. But your keyboard should not stop working if you leave it open on your desk. Right. But in 2 years of you're using it wrong, or the antenna gate, hold your phone wrong, hold your phone differently.
Pen gate.
Yes. There's all the gates. But like and then after Apple's working with YouTubers to fix issues, maybe they kicked in his door and threw his computer in the bathtub. But
I'd imagine that it wasn't a pleasant, I'd imagine that it's no secret that, how many people say that they've got kicked off the list to go to an actual Apple event because they said something not uber positive, or they didn't keep it neutral. The review wasn't neutral, it was, this really sucks. And then as soon as that happened, they mysteriously disappear from the list of being invited next year to the Apple event. So that happens. I can't imagine that the Apples that of long ago has changed that much where they weren't listened. Like, the more of these video hits you get on this this video about how bad this processor is killing the laptop, every view you get is going to take you one step closer to us just taking you out.
It was just it was a 2-week period of drama about 3 weeks if you count when the laptops came out, because people were like, okay, these just showed up on the web store. What is this? And then people started ordering them, and then you start to see people getting them. They're $9,000 laptops that are not performing as well as last year's i7 because of the throttling. And now you're like, okay, this is not a good look at all. And then you see other videos online that are talking about the way he tested it, and some of those were from the usual suspects you would expect to be more neutral or complementary. But there was a lot of legit, like, let's put this thing through its paces and see what he's talking about. And a lot of people came to the same conclusion, which, did that force their hand to a certain degree?
I'd imagine. I think it's just too many people jumped on board, right? It was, it was gaining some traction. It was getting the views. So everybody was like, well, let's just beat this thing down and see what it does. And I mean, it's not, I mean, it had to have been known. They took it's the same exact shell, and they've hit it's a significantly more powerful chip that's drawing a significantly, greater amount of power, and it's generating a ton of heat. So yeah, it's gonna do that. If it were me, if I had that, I would have just said, and I love mobile workstation. Like my Surface Book I use for editing, but I have other workstations that I can go to. If you're a content creator, most of the time you can put everything on SD cards or external drives. And what I would say in that instance is, hey, save your $3,400 for the 4 terabytes. Just get yourself a terabyte. Get this for when you're getting your edits together, and then take that $3,400 and put it toward a Mac Pro or an iMac Pro that has the ability, a 10-core machine that can slam through renderings, and then you're going to take your SD card out, put your project on there, render it out, and then you get the best of both worlds, as opposed to trying to spec out a laptop to do what an entire studio would have to do. That's probably if it were me, that's the conclusion that I'd come to, and say, yeah, this thing runs hot. It is a laptop, and it is thin as paper. So I either buy a gaming laptop that's, this thick, sounds like a jet engine coming out of the back. But how mobile is that? I'm perfectly fine with my Surface Book to do that. And I know its limitations. And then the second that another Surface Studio comes out, that's where I'll do the heavy lifting of the work. And then I won't melt my thin laptop.
I think a lot of the responses I saw are why we have these is the mobile aspect of it. Like, these guys are going to these events. They're traveling, trying to get these edits done with a lot of different B-roll sequences that are being taken out and about, and they're trying to get this stuff done all over the place. And they wanted to be able to do it. I mean, I've seen literally almost every YouTuber I've seen online is using these Samsung external SSDs they're just crushing, because none of the internals, like, they're just destroying their laptops at this point because they just can't handle the 4K projects that they're working on. The Mac Pro, the iMac Pro, was a whole nother conversation in itself, because that thing got up there in price too. But you're talking, I think there was an 18-core version, was there not?
There is, and
that's closer to 10 grand.
Yeah, you're getting up there now, and you can get up to like 12 or 13 grand. I think I spec'd that out at one point. Like every 6 months, I go through this phase where I'm like, maybe I'll get a couple Mac things, and then I snap back, and then I go back to Microsoft. It's just that, I don't know, regardless of how much faster a machine will be through Apple, because they're not competing with anyone. I like Microsoft as a company. I like the Surface line, but you don't get like a tippity top of the line device without spending a ton of money. Like my Surface Book was almost $4 grand. It's not because of the components inside, the engineering a little bit, yeah, but the real thing is their competition. Like, they don't want to price themselves close to their customers, because Dell's a customer, HP's a customer. They're paying for access to Windows. So if you make a killer device that is right around the same price as like a Dell XPS 15, everybody's going to buy the Surface. And Dell's going to say, what the crap are you doing, Microsoft? So that's, so you automatically get this like $1,000 premium on on the same exact specifications, but
I mean,
Well,
just
Matt,
your base iMac Pro is $5,000. Like, I'm looking at it right now
So-
on
I like
website.
his face when he looked at
but
the.
they
at the-
have the performance as far as the
Yeah.
performance goes. It's there, and like I said, I always think about it, and then
Throw that screen up there,
It-
Brian.
Hold on, I'm gonna
For
max
his-
it out on specs here.
for as fast as that would be, I also have to consider that it's designed to work with Final Cut like better than anything. And I'm a Premiere guy. I've been a Premiere guy forever. So is it going to be faster? Because what's going to happen to me is I'm going to have to relearn
Mm-hmm.
Final Cut.
And
I
it's
don't
not
think I'm
optimized
gonna,
anyway. So what's it? It's based
Yeah,
on what
I-
you use.
yeah, I use Premiere, and so it's as of right now, Microsoft is the way to go. I'm just hoping that they don't this new Surface Studio that's supposedly coming, just has the capability to make it like that Brian's showing now,
Yeah,
to really spec it out.
$13,000.
Go ahead, Brian. Go through it.
So that's if you cap everything out.
Right.
So yeah, your 18 core processor, 128 gig of memory. The Radeon. I mean, why wouldn't you go with the Radeon Pro
Right.
64? 4 terabyte solid state. And oh, you want to add Final Cut Pro in there? There we go. So yeah, I mean, you can really slam out quite a bit of money on these without really trying. But then, yeah, for something like that, you're losing your mobility. But then you also don't want your legs to catch on fire when you're trying to edit your
Right.
video.
Yeah, I would say that's the 1-2 punch, is to just get instead of specking out like $3,400 for a couple extra terabytes on the MacBook's crazy. Like, I would take that money and drop it into one of those, like even a modest one, like a 10-core version is going to get the work done way faster.
What's the price on
And-
the core, Brian?
So
It's like 8.
the 8 core is the standard in there, and then if you up to a 10 core, it's $800 extra.
That's not too bad.
So you could up to that and then drop your memory down. That'll save you a couple thousand.
I think I got one. I had one spec'd up there for like $7,000 or so, or it was like maybe $8,000. It was
What's the reason for you to
total.
even think about it without using Final Cut? Like, why would you even bother? Because it was that time of the month, and you were like, I need to look.
Because, well, the competing Surface product is that much money, but less of a product, because they're not trying to price themselves
Right.
with the competition. I don't want an XPS. I don't want an HP Spectre. Like, I want a legit Microsoft Surface product. I love the Surface Dial. I really like what the product does, but the problem is that there's that Surface Premium that's attached to it. So what I pay for a Surface, like if you look at Microsoft's site now, you can get yourself a Surface Studio, but it's half the computer that the iMac Pro is, but it's priced similarly. So that's the only, like, Apple has no they don't care. They're not competing against themselves. They've got they're
not selling their operating system.
Right. They're not selling their operating system. So that's exactly what it is. And there's a new chipset coming out, like it's a 24 core monster chip that's going to go into some of these Windows products. If there's a Surface Premium on that, it's going to be like $20,000, like just prohibitively expensive, unless you're just a huge YouTube star or you're like a production studio and it's a tax rate offer. I don't know, with something, but that 24 core, someone else is going to have a device. Dell's going to have something. Someone's going to have a device for, much less money, but it's just not the same. And so that kind of stinks.
It doesn't say Microsoft Surface on the outside of it.
Yeah.
But you do this
too. Like that upfront cost is prohibitive, I think, to some buyers. So like, even for me, whenever I buy laptops, I don't do a lot of heavy editing, but it's like every time I'm in the market, let's look at MacBook, let's look at high-end Dell XPS, and then I end up buying a $1,000, $1,200 laptop and then using that for 3 years until it dies, knowing that if I had bought the better one for 3 or 4 times as much money, I'd get more time out of it. But you know, that it's prohibitive in some ways, depending on what you're using it for.
That was the conversation with what I'm using now. Like I had a Chromebook at the time, and I was like, I didn't know this stuff was going to come up, but this is a 2015 13-inch MacBook Pro, and I'm still surprised that this thing is kind of kicking the way it is. I mean, it does what it's a port conversation for me at this point. Like I couldn't really overhaul to USB to Air Thunderbolt at this point. Live the dongle life necessarily, but I mean that the products last. I mean, you're not looking through. Well, I guess this would be about a 3-year-old machine, but this was half the price with open box at Best Buy or something like that. So, I mean, it works the way it needs to. It works over and above what I was necessarily needing. I guess Brian lands more in the average consumer realm, where it's like even the XPSs are. What are they at this point? The 15 is.
They're pretty. I was looking at them pretty.
They get up there,
and they get up there fast too.
Because every time I hear about a MacBook conversation, that's the Windows laptop that's brought up next to it. But if we're going to talk about melting in your lap, we have to talk about the Note at this point. I needed a segue.
Great segue.
Yes, I know.
That was great segue.
Yeah.
We could either went Note or M&Ms.
A little bit of a different conversation. What were you saying? August 9th was what we were looking at for Unpack.
The announcement.
Mm-hmm. So I think we pretty much know what we're looking at this point. You're looking at a Note 8 with a fingerprint scanner below the camera. What caught me off guard was some of the pricing, and this scares me a little bit because I saw reports of a 128 gig model, which I think was entry level, at $1,200, and a 512 for $1,500. I was annoyed at a $999 iPhone 10. So we're talking payments above that. You're adding another $8 a month for the base model Note 9. And they talk about this. We just got done talking about pro users for laptops, and they try to push a pro user or a power user on these phones or these devices. What does that even mean? What is a pro user on a smartphone? Or
I think it's a clever use of. They're going to have some promotion where you can trade in your old Galaxy and get a couple $100 off, and then they're going to make it like $1,000, and people are going to say, "I'm getting a great deal. It's a $1,500 thing for $1,000." They're getting the $1,000 that they wanted, plus they're taking their old Galaxy in to make money off of that. I mean, I know that the pen has batteries in it now, but it can't be
$300 batteries, Eddie.
Yeah, seriously. And it's going to
be that expensive.
What did I see?
Like,
Functionality.
$929, right? $930, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're looking at
even
$300 more.
Yeah. Cool. For a very similar device, and
I
mean, even a decent Wacom stylus doesn't cost that much money. So the fact that battery that pen has a little battery in it doesn't really justify if the price tag is that big.
Yeah. The issue with me is, okay, so it has a battery in it. That's great. There's functionality outside of the phone. Bonus. Tell me that this is the phone for pro users or power users. Okay, the stylus can take a picture out for you outside of the phone because you can press the button, or the extra functionality of that, or bring up Bixby, and Bixby's its own conversation. But
what?
Yeah, exactly. What's that? Speaker to be coming, I'm sure. I've heard that. But like, for the price difference, the functionality, I mean, granted, they're supposedly putting a 4,000 milliamp battery in the phone to kind of offset probably everything else they're adding in this. But it's major sticker shock. I mean, we heard massive amounts of people with this iPhone 10 in the conversation of hitting the $1,000 mark. And we've seen in my prior life, choices being made for an iPhone 8 or an A plus because of the $200 to $300 difference in price, and the home button, because that's a crowd pleaser for sure. But I mean, I mean, Brian can speak to it too, but like the average person's not going to value the logo on the back at that point as much as they did 2-3 years ago.
I mean, it was hard for me to do the Pixel 2 XL. I mean, that was $950, right? Somewhere around there. That was
$850 in tax, probably $900.
Right. Yeah, $900 after tax. But yeah, that was tough to do, you know, because it's like, but I mean, I got a premium device out of it, but I don't know. I mean, when you're talking about power users on a smartphone, like,
doesn't exist. It's not real.
Right. It used to be a thing, I think, you know, like, oh, I need to do my email and I need to be able to send video and pictures, and now everything's kind of leveled out and everything can do that, you know, except now you can do it with a pen for $300 extra.
That was not a convinced look at all.
I'm not convinced. I'm not.
If they get up on stage on the 9th and they say, this is for the pro user for business, and then immediately afterwards they set the phone on a shelf and walk over and click the pen to take a picture, that shows that they don't know who it's for, because I have a feeling that's what's going to happen, where they're going to tout how incredibly how productive this will make you, but then all of the features are going to be gimmicky little, hey, you can snap a picture from far away.
This whole thing's going to be gimmicky because they're talking about a Fortnite mobile partnership.
So you're putting your business customers
exclusive. Yeah, right. So it's making it so two ways. One, it's super gimmicky, and it's only going to last a month, and then it'll be out for everybody. But on top of that, like you said, you're then not pricing out, but you're separating your pro user that you're actually trying to market this for. Okay, maybe they play Fortnite, but probably not the case. So you're talking out of both sides of your mouth at that point.
Because I think you're going to see a lot of consumers that are going to be like, oh, I don't want to spend that much money on.
What value are you getting?
But you get 100 V-Bucks with it, so I believe that it's rumored that there will be free V-Bucks that come with the purchase of a note that goes towards your. I don't know. I'll reserve judgment until the 9th and see, but it's all adding up to be like, typically when this close to an announcement, when we hear this kind of stuff, it usually pans out to be true. So, you know, that 30-day exclusivity window, I mean, that didn't belong on that phone. It belongs on like the Razer phone or the new Asus Republic of Gamers phone that has a freaking fan attachment to cool down the chipset. Like, that's where you put Fortnite. You don't put Fortnite on the Note.
Well, they can afford the exclusive rights.
Well, you're paying for it. If it's $1,500, you're paying for it.
That's the worst part, because you know me, like, I was that Note purchase every 2 years probably. Like, that was when it was the bigger battery, the larger display. Like, that was my purchase, my go-to, my daily driver for years, until we started until the Pixel started to be a thing. I went from a Note 7, which I still loved. And there's small percentages of humans out there that are still rocking that thing. Pray for you guys. But until the Pixel XL came, a Pixel 2 XL, Pixel XL, and then the Pixel 2 XL, like, that's what I was using. So it's just tough in general to see that, because from what I understand now, going forward, we're not going to have a Plus model on the Galaxy side, and they're just going to have a Galaxy and the Note, or some version of that.
And we've talked about this, like, about who it's when the Note came out, it was completely different than everything else on the market. And you walk into a Best Buy or into a carrier store now, and you look at the sea of phones on the wall. It would have stood out years ago. Like, there's screens are bigger. Like, everything else is caught up now. And I don't know that you can bank on the pen to save you as far as productivity. Like all the apps are the same. Like people are using the same type of apps now on their devices. People are using the same type of features, but a lot of the stuff that you can communicate with, like Samsung specific, requires other people to have, you know, that app or that's it. And just the only company to get away with that is Apple. Like, you know, BlackBerry got away with it back in the day with BlackBerry Messenger, and then Apple with iMessage, and like no one else, you know, Google has 6 apps and they can't do it. Like they can't just to message someone, and they can't like capture that magic. So I don't know that Samsung's going to be able to do the same.
You need a niche. I mean, BlackBerry had security and BBM. I mean, every company used BlackBerries back in the day. Apple started to take that away from them, and then everybody that had a company had iPhones, and that's because of iMessage and group messaging and what they would say would be their security aspect. What's
too from a business perspective? Apple is super easy to roll out to hundreds of users. Like they have an enrollment program that you just put in your corporate email and it's done. Like
makes it easy. So what's the niche for Samsung at this point? Like what's the difference besides an infinity display? Wireless charging was their thing. I mean,
headphone jack.
Yeah. Oh, so let's go this route, because the whole Samsung commercial thing is just like destroying Apple at this point. Google went that route with the whole let's make fun of Apple for no headphone jack, and we saw what happened with that. So a little bit of crow going on there, but Samsung going in the same trend. I watched the commercials, and they're fairly funny when they're talking about, what do you mean the iPhone camera is not the best, not better than the S9? And the storage conversation, why is there removable storage on the iPhone 10? He's like, don't buy this one, buy this one, which is the 256. They made the geniuses look rough. Like it was a tough conversation, or cringeworthy to watch, I would say.
Their commercials are awesome though. It doesn't matter. They always have some hilarious commercials when it comes to, you know, to this eternal Apple and Samsung battle that's going to go on until one of them fails.
I mean, take a chill pill on the headphone jack thing though. Like, you know, it's going to happen. They're not going to have one in the next. The S10 probably won't have a headphone jack, and if it does, people are going to remember you talking smack a year and a half to 2 years ago about this headphone jack, because they remember when Google did it, and they're like, "Yeah, you did that. Yeah, you did that 2 years ago, and now you're eating it," because it's the notch conversation all over again. Now you're talking to talk smack on the notch. Now you have one on your phone. That's their claim to fame is no notch. Is what they have right now.
Apple changes the scope of a product. They do it all the time, and you know, they do something, and then everybody else kind of follows that direction. I mean, eventually, no matter how cool it will be to have a headphone jack, eventually no one's going to care, because people that are buying the masses of phones, you know, the millions of iPhone users, they're like, all right, I'm going to get wireless headphones. And then they talk to somebody and they get like, it's just, there'll be a day where like, just, it doesn't matter. Like, it's not going to be an exciting feature. It's like the keyboard was, you know, you think back how many people were like, I have to have a keyboard on my phone. Like I can't do anything without it. And then you had the last company, the last keyboard phone, I think was like the Droid 4. Mm-hmm. And that was their selling point, where they said, hey, we still have a keyboard.
No, well,
that's right. That was the actual last. You're right. That was the actual. So, and I think does the Key 1 have it, or the Key 1 2 or whatever it is? Does that one have a keyboard also?
Yeah, the rest of it's booty though. Like there's zero reason to buy that phone besides BlackBerry security. I'm sorry.
I honestly didn't know that BlackBerry still came out with another.
They did.
Yeah, so they're manufactured by someone else. It's kind of like not really a BlackBerry. It's just it has Android the name on it. But if you think of it that way, it's like that's no longer a selling point. Where at one time, when people were still like keyboards still physically mattered, that was something you could say in a commercial, and people would say, "Look, that phone still has a keyboard." But now think of how silly that would be. Where if that was your bullet point, your first bullet point that said, "Hey, our phone has a keyboard." Great.
Winner.
I think Samsung's going to get a hit with that. Like, hey, our phone still has a stylus, which was really popular on the Palms.
Right.
WebOS. Like it's just tough. Like, so when we're talking about like innovation and the fact that a lot of people say that Apple is not even doing that anymore. You hear the conversation about, I don't know if it's at this Unpacked where they're going to have the dual charging wireless charger that they can charge the Note 9 on, and the new watch is supposed to be coming as well. So basically beating Apple to AirPower.
I'd imagine. I think that's still going to use Qi though.
Yeah.
And AirPower is like something in its own. Like AirPower is like a proprietary technology, but it'll still have to be backwards compatible with Qi because you've got all these other products that work, and it's that you can, like cars and stuff that really say, hey, there's a wireless charger in there, so they'll make it backwards compatible. But the Qi, I think, the AirPower is for their the new AirPods. The new AirPods are supposed to be able to touch the back and give your iPhone a quick bump up in power. So, I'm interested to see what they'll do. I feel like they're gonna, push it as a productivity business device, but they're going to show a lot of consumer centric features. Maybe the thing that will, astonish everybody is that I think the Dex feature where it becomes a full desktop. You're not supposed to need anything now for that. Windows tried something like that. Microsoft tried something like that.
Not need anything. How?
And you don't need like a dock. Like currently you can plug a dock into a monitor and put your phone into it, and then it becomes like a computer. This is supposed to eliminate the dock aspect so that you're just your phone next to a Samsung display just puts up like a desktop environment.
Which to me would feel similar to not like a Chromebook necessarily, but it's a mobile version of an operating system.
Yeah, you're kind of in that gray Chromebook area.
Yeah. I mean, others have tried. It just the tech wasn't there. Motorola did it way back in the day with the lap docks, where you could dock your phone in and you had like a different version of Android up there. But maybe it will be something similar to Chrome. I don't know how that would work, but it would be cool.
It's cool is the thing, like niche sort of stuff. I don't know if it's super practical at this point. Sorry, I just wanted to end that because I didn't feel like it was worth the conversation. Because when we're talking about what's Samsung like doing right now, like this whole Galaxy X conversation, this foldable phone is real life at this point. Like it's something that's happening in the semi near future. When we talk about a Note not having an audience or a group, a demographic, like what the heck is this? Like what is this supposed to do for the average consumer?
It's going to have
your tablet and your phone in one shot instead of two. And it will probably come in at the hefty price tag of $2,500.
I heard between 15 and 2,000.
Yeah, the one article I was reading about it said something about close to $1,800.
Yeah, I can't imagine. No matter what happens, and no matter how much technology or how much R&D money you have to spend, and you have to try to, the product has to cost a certain amount because of manufacturing. There's like a magic number. Everyone now is off of contracts and everybody's into the device payments now. You start getting into $2,000, $2,400. That's $100 a month that you would pay. So your phone bill would increase by $100 a month. I think that's like insane. Like I can't imagine like 15 or 1,800 has to be like the max. I can't see a device launching for that price. I mean, heck, you can get a Galaxy Book, like a full-on Windows i5 laptop for $1,200. So I don't see how the heck that you're gonna do that, other than I'm sure that they'll push the, the display can't be broken. You can drop this a million times and it's not going to break. That's got to be their angle.
And a phone that's $300.
That's just tough. I just wanted to touch on it because I was like, I don't know what this is for. Like, I don't understand why this exists, and what purpose it's going to serve.
I think if you look at it from the perspective of like mobile entertainment, you know what I mean? Like, you're starting to see with DirecTV and Fios and Comcast the ability to, over-the-top apps to stream your TV on your phone. I mean, that's not a terrible use for it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So if you're really like, I really want to watch a movie or watch what's on my DVR, I'm sitting in the airport like I was in France for 3.5 hours. Like, how do you kill that time? Oh, let me pull out my phone that is now suddenly a 7-inch tablet, and we can sit here and catch up on our DVR. Like that's a use case for it. But then, how broad is that reach? When
the issue is you wouldn't have been able to take that trip because you bought that phone. That's the issue. Like, the issue is you can't.
I'm gonna sit at the airport and pretend I'm leaving. So we're gonna go to the airport. I'm gonna sit down.
It's an issue.
At a gate.
I just like going through TSA checkpoints,
Yeah.
So that's the issue with this sort of conversation, because that kind of rolls into some of the pricing. When we talk about pricing, it seems like it always was the Apple conversation, and then now Apple is going this LCD 6.1-inch phone that's supposed to be $700 or whatever it's supposed to be.
That's their budget phone.
Yeah, right. So I mean, does that bring Apple back to relevancy or with a larger demographic? Granted, the demographic was just everyone anyways, but does that bring them back to more accessible to the average consumer if it was your family members? Because I know we all have family members that use iPhones, but we're talking about a phone that's a 6.1-inch screen, which is it's a sweet spot for me, 100%. Thinner bezels, that whole spiel. Is that bringing them back to the pack as far as being more accessible? Granted, I think the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus were anywhere from $700 to $800. They were $100 apart.
Yeah, they were like $150 apart. I don't know what they're thinking if they do that.
It exists. We know this, Eddie. We know that this is a thing. It may be delayed from what I understand right now. They're talking about delays, but that's like old school Apple. Like, every year you're waiting for this iPhone to hit and you get 3 of them to sell the first day they come out.
Their last time that they tried this budget phone thing, they had this iPhone C and it didn't work out so well for them. As far as I mean, for my family members, like if the budget phone was $700, so what are some of the reasons that you would get your loved one, your mother or your grandmother, an iPhone? Is typically communication. I can iMessage, I can FaceTime. If that budget phone is $700, I would buy my gram a $350 iPad and have her FaceTime me that way, and then give her my old iPhone when I bought another one. Like, that's like how that always worked. I don't know how unless it's like super duper cheap, but I think the old way they did it was $700.
Like, I mean,
that's what I saw too.
It's supposed to give you, it's supposed to give you some of the looks and the feel of the newer iPhones in a more budget, and if Brian's going to use the air quotes, like more budget form factor cost wise, but the form factor is supposed to be iPhone 10, a little bit larger, same sort of look. And I'm talking
like you have the 10 when you don't. Well,
right.
I mean, I for all intents and purposes, that's probably going to be close spec wise to the current 10. Given how they tend to jump things, but it'll be close.
It's not like what they've been doing for years. I don't understand. Like, the 10 should get cheaper. next year, and then come out with your new 10.
It's just going away at this
8
point.
plus.
It's just such a weird thing to do.
It's odd because the 10 as we know it is gone come September, and you'll have a 6.1 in its place. You'll have a 10 that's going to be the mid range, but you'll have a 6.1 that basically takes its place because you can't have, if you're going to do 3 phones, you can't have last year's phone taking market share from this third phone that you come out with this year, which makes sense business wise. But why did you decide to make it in the first place? Probably because the one of the phones you're releasing this year is already at that $999 price point. So $800 is a weird, I guess we're talking 700, 900, 800 and 1100. I can't remember at this point. I was already messed up by the Note 9 pricing. It got me all jacked up in the head. But
I'll only understand if they stop sourcing their screens from Samsung, and that's why the 10's going away, is because they're done sourcing their Samsung displays, and then they pull their displays from someone else.
Well, they're not going to. Well, ask Google about LG's displays, and they're not going to do that PO like crap. But like to go back to LCD it's 100% for the price of that device. Like, why would you go back to an LCD otherwise? Just to be able to make it more accessible to a larger amount of people. They already sell the most phones of anybody at this point. I mean, it's just tough to understand necessarily the outlook. I mean, if you're that company, you do what you want. I mean, we understand that. You just kind of throw stuff out there and it's purchased. But I mean, I went through this whole week of listening to people questioning the iPhone's speed over cellular versus every other phone, and the fact that apparently between the Intel modem and the Qualcomm modem, depending on where you bought your phone, if you bought your phone in an Apple store versus buying it through a carrier, what modem you were going to get for LTE connectivity, and then like how does that function? Like, they literally throttle their, I think it's Qualcomm, they throttle that speed LTE wise to match what they did, or vice versa. I can't remember, but so now apparently they got into it with Qualcomm, and that's not a thing anymore. They're just going to use Intel modems in their phones. I'm like, it's not one thing, it's another thing at this point. Like, a lot of the stuff I think that made them feel bulletproof is like now coming out. Like, we're hearing about these things more. Like, they couldn't get a better deal through Qualcomm with their modem, so they were just like, screw you, we're gonna do all Intel, and that's gonna be the end of it. Those conversations they were having with these companies don't mind telling people about the fact that they're just not going to do business with Apple anymore. For whatever reason. But the whole reason that came out was because people were saying with speed tests over a network that iPhones were slower than everything else, which was like, that's a headline getter. I mean, most people that are using an iPhone don't necessarily see a difference in, I think it was 10 megabits or whatever the conversation was, difference in speed over a connection, cellular connection. Eddie more so would care about that speed every day, as far as just using it and wanting it to work the fastest it can. I don't know that the average consumer is going to worry about what their cellular connection is compared to everybody else.
I only care because I know, and if I know that it's happening and I'll run tests, but like tests are tests. It's the same thing with like benchmarking graphics. Like, you do that all day. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a better product. Just Samsung did that years ago against Apple, where they said, look how much faster our Exynos chip is, and look how much faster this chip is. But in real life, it's still, everything Apple related is optimized for Apple, because they have a very specific set of devices that they make. So a slower chip with optimized hardware and software, optimized software that's meant specifically for that hardware. I don't know that even that it's going to matter. Like, I don't think the average person's going to care. And you're looking at your Facebook feed and scrolling down, it's going to feel the same. So
I'll be honest. I think once I saw that, I go back to times where my Wi-Fi wasn't on my 10, and it was slower than what I was used to, coming from my Node experiences or my Pixel experiences. I probably didn't recognize it until I heard the story about the speeds, but I noticed it. But I'm closer to Eddie's end of noticing it versus the average consumer, I would imagine. I'm going into the store asking about the processor and those sort of things versus can I iMessage on it or whatever else it's going to be. Can I FaceTime my Gam on it? But
yeah, I think when you're looking from our perspective, yeah, I still want to know specs. I want to know what processor's in there, and I want to know whether or not it's the best, and especially with an antenna chip. I mean, I do a lot of driving now. I have an hour-long commute to work, and sometimes I need to download an audiobook right in the middle of that, which 10 megabits per second makes a huge difference.
That's like the real world difference. Like we all may be further along in this conversation or care about other things, but like Brian said, these are real world situations that you're not going to have Wi-Fi unless you're Eddie in his car. But like, it's just how I need it to do. Like, people decide on cellular carriers a lot for price these days, and it's a lot of shopping. But I've stayed with the same carrier for, among other reasons, because of the coverage area. I mean, to be able to know that it's going to work whenever I need it to work.
And to know that your hardware is stabbing you in the back.
Yeah, it makes it tough.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. Well, it's like that screenshot I sent you when I was in Ireland of Vodafone in Ireland at what was that, 111 megabits per second?
Crushing it. It was tough. I don't need that. But it's if it works, like that's what people want it to do. And this is the Apple conversation from years and years. If it works, as long as it works, and I know it'll work, I want it. I want it because it's dependable. I want this service because it's dependable. I'll pay more for it if I know it's going to work. That's probably how I subscribe to things. Like literally, I'm going to pay $500 more for this laptop because I know it's going to last one to two more years than the other one would. Like Brian was talking about with his analogy, or when he was talking about shopping for them, but yeah. So I mean,
you can probably hear the fan in it.
I just hope the downside to this is, if there is one, you just think about how popular Apple is and how many devices they're going to sell. There's going to be some tuning on the network end to make sure that all these iPhones are performing optimally. So what does that do for everybody else that still has, a different type of modem in it? There's network manipulation going on to make sure that the 25 million iPhones that were sold yesterday work flawlessly, but then you've got other devices that don't have, that it's not, the network is being tuned for the masses as far as, you have.
So you got to upgrade.
Right.
Sorry. That was just, that was part of that Samsung commercial too, was, so are you going to buy it? Like, are you going to get it? Or like, that's basically the end goal there was, okay, your phone doesn't work right now, so just upgrade. So, I mean, it's a tough conversation because you're talking about storage was a big deal. Like, I hear Apple people going back and forth with faster storage. So all of our storage, we don't have micro SD and expandable storage, but all of our storage is fast. You're not dealing with taking a tray out, having it not necessarily have it get corrupted if it doesn't save correctly and lose all of your information. Like, all of our storage is fast and on board. That's not an average user conversation.
SD or,
What's that?
Is that an unsupported SD?
Yeah.
I don't know that that's an average person conversation though. Like, it's okay. I mean, I've talked to people that are literally like, just give me the 256 gig model. Like I want this ecosystem. All the extra stuff you're telling me, it doesn't sink in. I may understand it now and I'll shake my head and say, yeah, okay. But those people just, okay, so if my phone right now won't let me send a text message because I'm out of storage, give me more storage on the next Apple product that I'm going to buy because I want this experience. On top of that cellular connection experience is what they've been experiencing, so it's not going to be any worse than what they were used to already.
It's a confusing space.
Ecosystems too. I mean, for us, it's pretty easy for us to bounce between Android, Windows, app. You know what I mean? Like, not to be like, oh, we're so smart, but we know what we're doing. We know what we're getting into when we're switching between these devices. Your average person is like, oh God, all my music and my apps and everything are all with iTunes and the App Store, and how does that translate over to Google? And what do I do with my backups of my phone on my Mac? You know what I mean? Like, if you're trying to go between the two, once you get locked into one, it's hard to leave. Like, I don't know that I could switch away from Google at this point because I've bought so much stuff with it.
We talked about my issue with my Gmail accounts. Like, I just can't. As soon as one thing, I didn't realize how much stuff was attached to my Google account until I changed something on it, and like literally everything in my life is affected to a point where I have anxiety. I didn't have anxiety before this, and now I have anxiety because of the issue with this. Like, I can't change anything. It's just, I understand why someone would go in and say, okay, all my photos are here. I need this to be in the next thing. And how can I make that happen as easy as possible and keep doing the same thing I'm doing now in the future? Our conversation is not always the same as the average consumer or average purchaser or buyer. So we have to be conscious of that, I guess, at that point. But which I think is where Apple's made their hay. Okay, we're going to make this easy to use, and now we're going to make everything else work super easy with this. And now you're just there. Like, everything's so easy. I have a rental car right now that literally I plugged as soon as I got in, it knew that I had an iPhone and was like, can you connect it to Bluetooth or plug it in? And all my stuff's there now. The text messages and Apple CarPlay is in this rental, and it's like I can see my text messages. Like, it wasn't something that was odd or hard to navigate. It just worked, which is why I think that's what they're good at. Yeah, and the ecosystem is what it is. Like, you pay a premium for this laptop. You're going to get your iMessages on. You're going to pay a premium for that Apple TV or this phone in itself. These phones aren't cheap. No phones are cheap at this point, but you're paying for an experience, I think, which is the same as anything else at this point.
I believe that wholeheartedly at one time. Like, now, I think that Google has gotten to that point. It's just that it's not front and center, and I don't know. They're having difficulty making it front and center. Like, my father-in-law's vehicle he just bought has the Android Auto in it, and it's the same exact thing. Like, you plugged in, it just worked. There was no issues with it. I have an iPad and a couple Microsoft products. I have my Android messages and Allo and Hangouts on them all, and it just works. Like, it just works. It's just that I knew to do that because I follow this stuff. I don't know. Like, I think that Apple has everything work together. It's just simple. It's only because there's one choice. So it has to be that way. Like, when you boot up your Mac, it's like Siri's right there and iMessages are right there. Like, it has to be that way. So that's why they know. But I don't know that it's necessarily any easier. Like, I scanned a barcode with my phone, my messages pop up on my computer, and they're there forevermore. Like, it was easy to do, but does the average person know how to do that?
There's no store to walk in there and say, right, do this. Right. I mean, the pop-up stores we talked about a long time ago, but to be widely accessible, there's no store you can go in and talk to a genius and have that happen. or diagnose their phone for whatever issues are happening or whatever.
And I think Google recognizes that,
yeah.
And they're making changes to their operating system that, a couple years from now, it will be like that. It's just that they went through the growing pains, and I think they realized the error of their ways, and they're transitioning from Android to the next generation of Android. I think will bring about that same type of functionality.
I mean, we're talking about what's the next turn with Android? Is it
Fuchsia.
Fuchsia and Google's totally controlled operating system, not open source, but
Right.
totally controlled by them to be able to be more of an easy to use type of operating system.
No more EU fines either for anti-competitive.
Yeah. That was rough.
$5 billion a year.
Billion. But that's 3 to 5 years out, from what I understand.
Yeah, I would say so. But that's the end game, and that will put them in terms of, you see Apple kind of doing it. Like iOS is looking more like Mac OS every day, but it's not the same. Like Fuchsia is literally the same. Like it's the exact same thing across the board. So I think that's going to put an advantage on Google's end, where you buy a thing and Fuchsia's in it. It's just going to automatically work. Like you're not going to have to do any rigmarole to make it happen. It's just going to happen.
I'm more excited about seeing it. It feels like a Nexus software. Like it feels like it's that program, but in a software version, where it's like, this is our baby. This is going to be all us. We control it. Your experience will be easy. We'll get you through this, that sort of thing. It just said I have to wait 3 to 5 years to see whether it's going to be
well, you can download it now and try it out. It doesn't work very well. You could get the idea where they're going, because I mean, there's no more. It's not Linux based. Like it's just everything's built from the ground up. So
all it needs to do is basically do the basic functions. From what I was reading, it's like an operating system really just registers the clicks, lets you navigate per se, but everything's app based at the core of what it's really doing. So it's working with apps. It just needs to be able to launch those.
They're looks like their mission is to build scalability, where if you throw an operating system, if you have an operating system in your hand and you have 10 devices in front of you, you can put that same one on 10 different form factors, and it will be able to adjust to whatever form factor it's on. So there's no tweaking. There's no, we have to make this for tablet screens. We have to make this for this screen. It's just, it knows it evolves into whatever it needs to be for that machine, and then it works.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what that turns into come a couple of years from now, where it's like that to me becomes more competitive. And that competition is good for the consumer across the board. I think we would all agree with that. So I guess we can get off of that, because we just rant on that whole spiel. I read the other day about the Google Home scheduled routines. Somewhere, I forget, I read them. The weird part basically just being that you can set things to happen without you actually having to do it, like to actually ask the assistant to do it. I can do this on my Philips Hue app already. So what's the difference, Eddie? Do you know what's the difference?
Same.
With these?
It's the same thing. It's designed for it's another product that nobody knows that they can do it. So say like we were talking about.
Can you explain it a little bit? I don't know if I did a good enough job explaining it.
You can go into, it's like setting a timer or something to happen at a specific time, but you can set off a chain of events that go across every product. So yes, the Hue, you can set it to wake you up gradually at 6 a.m. where it kind of fades in. But you would go to another manufacturer's app to open your garage door. And then you would go to another manufacturer's app to turn your fans on or your sprinklers or whatever. This is, the assistant is acting as the hub. and then it's telling each of those things what to do at that time. So if at 6 a.m. you want the lights to turn on and the coffee maker to turn on, you can create yourself a routine to do that.
So that's more the home app when you're dealing with iOS and like integrating everything into one.
Yes, and it's super. It's not. There's still some things, but it's super comprehensive, super powerful, and Google is definitely, without question, leading the way when it comes to the Assistant, as far as a product, like the Assistant as a platform, as a all-encompassing thing. Like, they've done a better job than Microsoft did with Cortana, that Apple's doing with Siri. Like, this is like a full-on featured Assistant has become like literally the hub. Like, it's one thing that does everything. So
it does a lot for me. I mean, I noticed a long time ago when I first put the Hue bulbs in the house, was when I got the functionality for them to turn on when I knew my alarm was going off in the morning. Like, so my lights are already on when I get up, and the lights turn off a half hour after I leave. So all of that I knew was a thing. I just got a Hue bulb, so I didn't have to turn all my lights off in one freaking room every time I left. But I didn't necessarily understand the difference with these routines through the Assistant, which makes more sense now. If it's going to be the hub for all things smart in your house, that makes more sense to me than
for a while now, you could set like your custom command. Like, you can say good morning, and then it would trigger like a million events that happen. This is doing that with using time as the factor for the trigger. Time is the trigger, not your voice. Yeah. So that's the big difference between them.
Yeah, I knew that that makes more sense, and to me makes it super useful in that aspect, whether it be, I mean, depending on every smart home things are now a thing. Homes are being built with this stuff in it. Not just older homes that are having stuff. My house built in the 50s has Hue bulbs throughout. So at this point, okay, do I want my lights a certain brightness at this time of day? I want them to dim as the hours go or shut off at a certain time, whatever. Anything that makes anyone's life easier, or that's 100% why I got them. I already said that. Like, I didn't want to turn the lights out. So why I have 3 Google Homes, besides the fact that they give them away when you breathe. Like, it's literally it's a step toward, you say Google and a Google Home pops up on your desk.
Yep. It's a step in the proactive direction as far as Assistant, like where it's predictive instead of reactive.
Which is also scary.
I see a future of Nest integration where, like, when I get up, Nest knows where I'm at, and then based on what I do next, it'll trigger a series of events. Like, if I walk over to where my shoes are and put my shoes on, then the garage door opens because it assumes I'm leaving.
It's almost like an NFC thing. Like, if NFC tags were a thing. Yeah,
if I just get a drink out of the refrigerator and I go lay back down in bed and it sees me lay in bed, then it shuts the lights off again. Like, that's what I see happening as far as whenever all these products are talking to one another in a way that is just one cohesive unit. It's just, I'm not going to say, hey, open the door, turn this on, turn that off. Like, it's just going to see where I'm going and then do it, and then do that set of actions.
You're super excited. Most people are scared to death that it knows. Like, it knows. Like, you're so excited. I can get excited about that. It knowing where you're at in your house creeps a ton of people out. It's one of those things. So it's 50-50. I think people will get on board with that. I think the Hue bulbs are the easiest thing to bridge the gap. My parents' house has them now, and that's like the greatest thing in the world to them. So is that their gateway drug is the Philips Hue lights?
I don't know. You're creepy so to me.
I know
someone sitting in front of a laptop with like strings of like observing code going up saying, okay, the Assistant's working properly. He laid down, some person laid down and lights went off. Like, that's way less creepy than if that person was at my door, like through the window like this, and said, he's down, turn off the lights. So, like,
that's another analogy or metaphor that I enjoy. It's creepy.
It's just a pleasant little, safe little product. So that's how they're Amazon. The Echo does the same thing, where it's like, oh, it's just this harmless little blue light up tube. What possibly could go wrong?
It listens to everything that happens in your house at all times. Like that was the conversation was, okay, they're listening. It's listening at all times. Well, yeah, it has to listen, so it knows when you say the key command. Like I understand that. I already give it all my information anyways. It doesn't matter. It's just everything.
Anyone could find me at any given point.
They'll find you in Ireland is what they did. But we were just talking about this before we got on with the Hue bulbs and the sales that were going on. How many more we're gonna throw in the house? It's like it's about as addictive as anything at this point. Those were only a couple other things. I know that we missed it last week with the Nintendo Switch pay to play. I believe is something you wanted to cover. I think I wasn't 100% sure what exactly this entailed.
Do you want to see these pricing options? I'll throw them up.
Yeah, do that and then explain it a little bit more to me because I'm confused.
Nintendo's online presence has been questionable for a very long time. Like Microsoft and PlayStation and Sony have just skyrocketed past them as far as their online. Their online functions were like they're a pain in the butt to use. You need like friend codes, and I mean they're really catering toward the little ones, saying, "Oh, hey, the kids are playing this. I don't want them," because I know that Xbox Live and PlayStation, it's like a really toxic place. Yeah. Like you can't go anywhere without a 10-year-old talking about what he's going to do to your mom. Like it's just insane. So I understand like why they're so protective, but I just don't understand how this is going to work.
So go ahead, Brian. You have it up on the screen there, at least.
All right. So you have individual and family memberships, and now it doesn't look like this applies to the Wii U. But you can do an individual membership for $4. 3 months is $8. 12 months is $20, which is dirt cheap compared to PSN.
See, $69 a year.
I think it's 70, 75, and
I have
how much is Xbox Live?
50 or 60. I think it's 60 now. It's $59.99. So it's not like. Well, the 1 month version is getting close. Like the 1 month version is almost $50. The 3 month version, I guess, probably makes a little bit more sense. Or the 12 months is $20. You can't really beat that.
Yeah.
So
and then they have a family one where you can link different Nintendo accounts together into a family group that will all have access to Switch Online. So I think this is coming out ahead of their what's the new Pokemon game coming out? Oh my god.
Don't ask me.
Whoa. I'm blanking on it. I'm drawing a blank. There's a Pikachu version and an Eevee version. That's all I remember. So because that's going to have a lot of online capability, and you're going to be able to link it to your Pokemon Go account on your phone.
If you scroll up a little bit and click the features, it shows you what all is included in that in that online membership. Like on that same page, there's a little section that's next to plans and pricing that says features. And what I noticed that is curiously absent is voice chat.
So no 9-year-olds are going to tell you what to do about your mom.
Well, I think when you look at how Nintendo markets itself and how they try to position themselves, they try to be more family friendly than PlayStation or Xbox. I mean, like I said, the first game that came to mind was Pokemon for Nintendo Switch.
For whatever reason that is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, hey, I did get my Mr. Mime while I was in Europe, so it was very important. But, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense to not have that feature. So your 8-year-old kid that wants to play Pokemon online and trade with strangers, I guess, doesn't get told to, what we get told on a regular basis.
That leads me to believe
Overwatch poorly.
Yeah, that leads me to believe that like it's not going to be like hardcore like Call of Duty and games like that where you just you need communication, like steady communication as far as
fun. I mean, if you're talking about the sports games on PlayStation with NHL that I played a ton and Madden, like people online conversing and interacting was a big reason why people pay $60 or $70 a year.
And as opposed to hitting the up direction to say good game or something like that goes across the thing.
High five.
But there are some neat things. Like it looks like there's like a 20 Nintendo game, like old Nintendo games that you can play.
I like that.
And they're enabling them to be played online so that you can for the first time. So like games you could only play with somebody sitting next to you way back when, you can now play online with like Double Dragon, games like that.
Contra,
and then cloud backup for save states for games is a big one.
Ice Climber, Dr. Mario. Oh, they're gonna have Zelda on there. Soccer.
Really good. I mean,
is the original soccer.
It's like it's the same as anything else. It's like trying to infiltrate a space that's already has big players in it, and like they've got to take a step in that direction, at least try it, right? So
what Switch is really becoming popular for is indie developers. Like I guess whatever OS they're running on that is super easy and super accessible to develop on. So when I went to PAX East back in March, we'd go up to these indie game booths and they'd be like, oh yeah, we're coming out for PC, we're gonna have a mobile app and Nintendo Switch. And that was just the theme across the board. And it's like, holy, everything's coming out for the Switch in the indie space. Like, why is that? And they said cheap licensing and it was easy to develop on and easy to work on. So, it has a space that's not really visible yet. But
so is this going to make it more? Is it going to make it more visible or more likely for people to purchase? I mean, the Switches were impossible to get for a while there, but is this going to make it? Is this going to take it to the next step? I guess.
I think it's adding a feature that, like Eddie said, Nintendo has really struggled with for a long time. So, their free online play was there. You could play Mario Kart online on the original Wii, but it was not great. But now, if they can make it work, especially if you're paying for it. If you're paying for it, you want it to work.
Right. But it's free. You're like, stupid thing. And then you don't pay.
Whatever.
When you pay real cash money for it and it doesn't work, ooh, that's a whole other conversation entirely.
But I mean, that's the thing that, like when you look at like the pro gaming circuit, they're playing on PC or they're playing on Xbox or PlayStation, So now that you're adding this online component where it's going to theoretically be easier, at least to work cooperatively in a team, you can start looking at that space as well, to make it more popular with your, I guess, quote unquote, hardcore gamers.
I mean, they can do it. You look at some of the ports of Doom and some of the ports of games that you're like, holy crap, that actually runs half decent on this console. I can see them getting harder core games. There's going to have to, without being
the service needs to work the way they want it to, and then that opens it up for those games to show up and use that platform.
Unless you have some kind of code that says, my feelings aren't hurt easily. Check this box.
Waiver.
Sign the waiver. I can't. Are your feelings hurt easy? Yes or no? If you check no, you go into the good game, thumbs up chat. And then if you check the box that says I got a little thicker skin, then you get to play with the real people, the real 10-year-olds.
Your mama jokes
that are hanging out at your mom's house. Yeah.
Oh God. I just the Nintendo conversation. I see the former, not the latter, or the demographic. Although the Switch is that popular, that even me being outside of that gaming stuff, is that the Switch was popular enough, like Brian's saying, that if you can bring everybody that wanted a Switch or got a Switch, and the people that are waiting to get one, and then be able to do the types of things that people already enjoy on Xbox and PlayStation, that's just a win, and it's cheaper, and they can always say we're cheaper than everybody else. especially if
the
they're
other
playing
thing,
some of their favorite games too.
the Switch just wins on portability too. I mean, like the ability to undock that tablet and take it with you and have the same experience that you had when you're in your living room. It's kind of a big deal. I mean, PlayStation tried it with the PSP and the Vita and failed both times. So, and Microsoft, now that, because you can essentially play Xbox games on a PC, right? I don't fully understand, and that's the thing.
Play
I don't
anywhere.
fully understand it, right?
When
Doesn't
you
make sense.
when you purchase one through the store, it becomes available on both, and then there's cross-platform play. So, like if you buy Halo on one place, you go on your PC. When you open the Microsoft Store, it's just a free download, and then you can just seamlessly bounce in between. Like I play Halo Wars a ton, and I can play on the Xbox. And the Xbox is in the bedroom, and then whenever people want to sleep, I have to go to a PC and play. I can go to the PC and fire it up, and then it takes like 5 seconds of syncing, and then it's right where I left off. So it's a pretty robust. So it works really well.
Oh, that's good to know. I haven't had an Xbox in years, so
I just think it's a nice. I wanted to get more information from you guys just to see if this was gimmicky type feel, or whether this was something that may actually push that to a different level in a different space.
I like the Switch. I really like the Switch. I've bought games that were available on everything else. I have a PlayStation 4, an Xbox One X, and a Switch. There are games that I bought on the Switch even though they were available on the other two. Like Sonic Mania, I bought on the Switch. It was just like I sometimes prefer, even if I'm at home, to just lay around, put my feet up, and play the Switch somewhere weird, like just someplace where I'm not in front of a television set or anything. Like, outside on the porch, right?
Red wine
and Sonic
candles.
But it's just I like it. I like it a lot. I think that if they continue on this path, and again the online thing, if they have other features, I think that even if the online play isn't the greatest, having access to free NES games, like stuff that I grew up with that I really want to play, like I think that'll let me overlook a lot of stuff because stupid online's not working. To heck with it, I'm gonna go play Castlevania. Like that's okay. I can do that.
The other thing too is, that gives them a pretty big cash influx. You know what I mean? Like, obviously some of that money that you're giving them monthly or annually is pure profit for them, which is something that I think they need to kind of maybe help their R&D, which is already kind of ahead of the curve in some ways, at least in terms of, portability and everything. Like the Wii U is a pretty neat concept, but then the Switch just kind of took it one step higher.
Yeah, that
reoccurring income is a business model. I mean, if you can get income subscription based wise, it's a no brainer.
Everyone has.
We were talking before with ecosystems. Once you're locked into paying that thing annually, you're gonna keep doing it. I mean, I renewed a PSN subscription for, I don't know, when did I move to New York? 2010, and it's 2018, so it's been 8 years.
It just comes out of your bank account. It's just at this point, it's just gone.
Every November, I think.
Anniversary.
$70 gone.
You might get a Google Home with your next one.
Just falls out of the sky in a little umbrella.
PSN, $70 and a Google Home.
Oh Christ! Okay, that ends that conversation. Thank you for doing that. I have to give, and I really need a intro for this segment because it's Eddie's Tesla Minute at this point. Like he's got to have a little bit of time. I asked you before.
Mute myself for the remainder of the.
Yeah, I asked you before we went live about what was going on. I'm pretty sure Brian just said that a car didn't wreck itself. Was the conversation? So that's always productive. But
it avoided a wreck on its own. Nice. So that's.
So I don't have any Tesla news right now that I've run into. So what's going on in your world? Do you have any video? I mean, I know you do a lot of videos on autopilot and what's going on with your car. So do you have any news or anything going on with your car right now? Maybe some videos you're going to be doing about it.
Yeah, there's autopilot's kind of stabilized. It's, you know, I see features here and there. It's kind of stabilized. You can tell that their focus is elsewhere. I think next month is the big autopilot update that's supposed to be like the big one that's that adds a ton of new features that they've been testing in what they call shadow mode, which is the computer is pretending like it's doing it, but it's not actually doing it. So as you approach like a bend, the computer is simulating a brake push and seeing the torque that you apply to the steering wheel, and it's just the computer says, hey, I would have applied that much torque, so this is good. That shadow mode, I think they're going to remove that, and then it'll start to do more stuff that is closer to like level 3 autonomy as opposed to the level 2 that it's at now. So that's going to be a big deal. And it's not too soon yet because it's, you know, Elon has been talking about that for 3 or 4 months now, saying that August was the big version 9 update. So there's a lot of people looking forward to that, myself included. So I've only seen incremental stuff as far as autopilot goes. The bigger stuff has been a lot of price changes. They've taken the pricing overall went down if you spec'd it out, and it went up if you wanted a base model. Like there's whenever I bought mine in 2016, I could literally pick everything in it. Like if I wanted a certain color dash and a different color for the headliner, and like I could literally go in and pick whatever I wanted. So if I wanted a crazy rainbow looking car on the inside, I could have done it. And then sometime shortly after, they smushed it together where now you can pick, if you pick black seats, this is the interior you get. If you pick white seats, this is the interior you get. Like you can't pick like you used to. And then you had choices of how many speakers you wanted and all this stuff. So now it's like, it's just one option. Your premium stuff, like your glass roof and your air suspension, like everything is included. So if you were to have bought the car today, if you were to have bought that car 6 months ago, it would have cost you like $5 or $6 grand more. But on the downside, you can't pick a base car. Like there's no more baseline car. It's not, when you buy the car, you get the upgraded audio whether you wanted it or not. You get these upgraded features. You don't get to pick and choose what you want. Like you just get the best. So I'm sure that's for manufacturing to streamline it. They probably had a ton of success with the Model 3 that way, since they've been pumping out like 5,000 or 6,000 of them a week.
Well, that's the issue with the Model 3 now is production.
Yeah. So it looks like they've, and again, like you buy a performance Model 3, you get red with white seats. Like that's what you get. And you'll eventually be able to, I'm sure, pick, more of like the color and stuff, but it's what it seems like it is. It's like you pick your color outside, you pick your color inside, and you want it to drive itself. Like that's it. There's no more configuring how many speakers do you want in this thing. Do you want the doors to look this way? Do you want your tailgate to automatically raise and lower? Do you want a manual like it's just, they've switched it all. So if you hope to buy a base model, then the price went up for that. But if you at one time were like, man, I really want to get this, I'm going to spec it out, then it was a pleasant surprise because the cost reduced significantly. What used to be, 91, 94,000 is now 81 or 86. So pretty cool.
Super great for the average consumer.
It's a step in the right direction as far as in one way. In the other way, like there was something insanely awesome about being able to like pick minute little details in the car itself, and the fact that now it's like a bundle where I get white seats, I get this exact interior. Like there's no way for me to pick my headliner and stuff. That was one of the cool parts about it, about the Tesla, was that you could personalize it like Moto Mods. Or not Moto Mods, like Moto Maker, yeah. Where you could have there was a phone that could look 1,000 different ways, and they've kind of streamlined it down. It's probably less of a nightmare production wise, but it was cool to be able to build it. And that was from that part, the vehicle part. That's all that's there. And the latest headline has been that the Tesla sales people, their version of salespeople, their experienced folks, are the least pushy in the automotive industry, hands down. And so like you saw a lot of negative headlines, but when you actually read it, you're like, oh, so if I go there, I'm not going to feel pressured. And they had a list of them. They had a list of, if you walk into this dealership, they're going to pressure the crap out of you. And then it went down the list, and there's this independent group that goes around and they shop for cars, and they rate the pushiness of that particular brand. And Tesla was like the lowest score they'd ever seen. Like they couldn't make them try to buy a car. They're like, they're like, so what do I have to do to get this? They're like, whatever you want. But I mean, my wife is shopping for a car now. Like, we haven't finalized anything as far as vehicle. And it sucks. Like when I bought my car, and I'm used to that now. Like I'm used to going to Tesla and walking in there and talk, like I'm accustomed to that. And it was just like such a carefree experience. People are like, yeah, check out the car. It's pretty cool, huh? And they're like, it does this, this, and this. Do you ask me any questions you want? And then I made the mistake of giving one of them my telephone number. And I swear every like 6 hours, they're calling me. Be like, hey, what can we do to get you down here? Give me a can of gasoline so I can burn your dealership down. I'll be right down.
That's tough. I've been there.
I was there 2 years ago.
Yeah, I get it. So do you have anything on the horizon for your channel, Eddie? Is there videos? You're just waiting on the autopilot update, I take it?
Yeah, I'm looking at right now, just doing some quick differences between autopilot 1 and 2 with the recognition of signs. The older version of autopilot has recognition as far as like details in signs and everything. It can tell like motorcycle, it can tell the difference between things, but it governs its speed by actually looking at the speed limit sign. The new version of autopilot uses map data, which is if Google Maps says this stretch of road is 45 miles per hour, then that's what the car drives. But I ran into some issues with that recognition on my commute to work.
And now we do a shameless plug. Shamelessly plug that video. Plug the video.
The video will be up probably tomorrow evening. It's on my channel. It's just Eddie Daniels. There's two. There's apparently a clarinet player. Once you get past the clarinet player, then there's me. Someday I'll be more popular than the guy playing the clarinet. But until then, I'm the second one. But it's like tree branches there's a 50 mile per hour sign, and then there's a tree branch that just goes into it. So it makes the 5 look like an 8. And then, so my car thinks it's 80 miles an hour when it goes past. It's like, oh, cool, 80. Like, even though I don't know that an 80 mile per hour speed limit exists anywhere in the United States, but then it'll like freak out and go. And then there's another one where someone vandalized a sign and they bent it. So it's 45 miles per hour this way. And then this way is 25, like the cross traffic. And there's a sign, a stop sign and a 25 mile per hour sign. And someone bent them. So the camera just picks them up, and then my car slams on the brakes because it thinks that the speed limit has changed. So now that I'm aware, but it's just one of those things where I'm looking at the pros and the cons of that.
That's cool though. I think that I've watched all those videos, so it's something especially if you're in the space already with a car, or you're contemplating it for those reasons. It's a no-brainer to watch and try to kind of, instead of you having to go through that with your own car, watch his videos, see what's happening with his, see if it doesn't run it itself into a building or something. So I think that's all the topics I had. I wanted to give Eddie his Tesla minute. I will figure out an intro to that at some point and give him his own intro. Anything in closing, guys? I wanted to get out of here before the 2-hour mark, so we're going to do that. Anything else you guys wanted to share before we get out of here?
Well, I wanted to rant for 10 minutes about nothing, so we could hit the 2-hour mark again. So
no.
All right.
Eddie, plug this channel. You have anything else, sir?
I do not. That's it's been a fun week. I think the next weeks coming up are going to be, we're going to have some pretty cool stuff to talk about from Samsung, from Apple, and from Google. So it's going to be a reality soon. So we'll be pretty busy as far as device launches go.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad we were gone for an extra week. Brian was out and about in the homeland. So I want to try to stay more consistent. We'll go with the 2-week stretch right now, based on what we got going on with devices and things like that. But that's a wrap on episode 2. Anybody that watches after the fact, we appreciate it, because no one's watching it right now. That's my fault. We have our own dedicated channel at this point, so I'll try to get everybody on that channel instead.
We're going to turn this into an internet game. Once you get so many subscribers, we're just going to change channels, and then everybody's going to find you.
Just come find me. It's hide and seek on YouTube is what it is. So we appreciate anybody that watches after the fact. And if you stick around for, say, episode 3 or 4, if we get to that point, we appreciate it. Other than that, for Tech for 3, I think we're out of here.